And we'll just do a little bit of housekeeping and then we'll get started. So first off, let me ask how many people here today, type of one in the chat if this is your first time seeing me present on Excel and PowerShell. And it's perfectly fine if it is. Okay, Gabrielle. Nope. Mara, Gabrielle. Awesome. Okay, so we can only a couple of people. That's fine. I just want to calibrate what I'm going to present because there's a bunch of people who've been here a few times, more than once, to see me present on it. So they may see a few things that I've presented before, um, which is fine as well. Joshua, first time, so no problem. So let's kick off a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. So my name's Doug Fink. I'm a 16-time Microsoft MVP. I wrote a book on PowerShell for developers. Um, So I know a little bit about both of these things. I've known Excel for way too long. Um, so I created a PowerShell integration module into in with Excel for Excel, and let me just check some stuff's cooking here. And did that a bunch of years ago. It's got about 11 million downloads, and it makes automating Excel quite easy, and you can do some really amazing things with it. So we'll see some of that today. Um, So just as a note, if you're in New York City, that I know everybody on here is not, but coming up in May, we're going to do a Microsoft Build 2025 watch party. We're going to do that in Lower Manhattan. So if you want to go back to the meetup page where you got where you signed up for this, you can see that, and then you need to also you can RSVP. You need to RSVP at this link, so we get your name on and so we can give it to the folks at the building. So if you're in the city, great. We're going to have food and snacks and coffee and whatnot, and there's going to be a whole bunch of MVPs there, myself included, and we're going to watch the keynote for Build, which is going to be quite exciting, I believe. So yeah, hope to see you there. And just as a note, I'm about to publish this one April 3rd, so in a couple of weeks. So next week is going to be the Microsoft MVP Summit. I'm going to be attending it remotely, and there's going to be a lot of announcements about AI, about the cloud, about Visual Studio Code, and GitHub Copilot, and agents and agentic workflows. Um, so I don't not only do Excel, but I'm also very deep into the AI space. I've got a few modules that out there. Maybe we'll see one of the functions out of it there today. But I expect that this is going to be a great thing coming out of the MVP Summit next week. So on April 3rd, um, you can head back to the page and you can sign up for that. I'm going to probably talk about Anthropic Claude multi-model command processors. I just did a video, dropped it today on that. GitHub Copilot agents and MCPs. Pretty cool stuff. The direction of AI is quite crazy. So if you're into that kind of thing, which I think you should be, it's definitely worth coming to see this. It's going to be a fun time. Um, and for folks who don't know, here's my YouTube channel. That's where I'm gonna put this in the chat, so you can head over to the YouTube channel, and you can go around. I have all videos from previous Excel stuff that I've done. I've got videos up there that I do anywhere from 3 to 5 to 15-minute videos on different types of things that you can do, not just with Excel and PowerShell, but just straight PowerShell. I did one yesterday again on integrating it with GitHub Copilot and building an MCP server. I just dropped that this morning. Get on there, subscribe, hit the notification, and when I put this video up there from today, you'll know when it gets posted, and you'll get notifications when I post ones coming in the future. Like I'll probably post parts of the what I'm going to do in the AI build hour. Cool. So for some of you folks, I know I've seen you before. You're going to see a bunch of stuff that if you've been here for the Excel piece, you're going to see some repeats. Um, It's unfortunately a bit necessary, but there are a bunch of new features I'm going to show you at the end. Not features for the Excel, well, I guess around Excel at the end. So definitely worth checking out. All right. So let's kick this off. So as I mentioned, there's about 11 million downloads on this module. And if you want to play along today, or if you haven't yet, all you need to do is in PowerShell, type in install hyphen module import Excel. It'll install it on your machine, and then you're ready to go. You don't need to have Excel installed. This can, and we'll talk about why that's good, and when to use it. Um, if you do want to use this module to create Excel files, um, and you want to view it, well, then you need Excel installed. But typically you don't. This module runs on all three platforms. It runs on a Mac, Linux, and Windows, because PowerShell is on all of those. And I believe it's still works on 5.1. I don't remember what my modules work on. But yeah, so you should, if you have PowerShell 5.1 installed or higher, this will work. So even if you're on Linux or Mac and you install the latest versions of Windows or latest versions of PowerShell, you can install this and you should be good to go. Also, see if we can click on this. This is the GitHub repo. You can head over there. I'll drop that into chat. So you don't have to, if you want, you can take a look at how I've got a bunch of things up here, how you do create spreadsheets and whatnot, how to add charts, and you can look at all the code. There are people that post issues and questions that have been up there that I answer, and they go back. There's like, been 13, here we go, 1,100 of them are closed. If you're so inclined, you can actually look at the code and say, hey, I think that you can make a suggestion of something to be added or removed, or if you find a bug, it's a good place to come and drop that information. And if you are so inclined, you can create your own pull requests. I've got a few that's open, but they've been for a while. So anyway, so that's the GitHub repo. Cool. I'm not going to talk about a lot about, usually I open this up with why do I start down this path? We'll talk a little bit about that. I've been doing Excel since it first came out. So that's like 100 years ago, I think it is. And I've looked at many languages in my many decades in the software industry. I'm a software developer. That's what I did full time and got paid for. PowerShell is just something that I had a lot of fun with. I was a Visual Basic coder for a while. I was a C coder, C++. I did some Python. I did some Ruby. So I like doing that kind of stuff because as I look at different languages, I get ideas of like, well, how can I get my job done better? And what can I do in Python that I can't do in PowerShell? Can I bring that over? And some of the things that Python did, they have something called matplotlib, where you can actually say, here's an array of numbers, go give me a plot. And it's like 5 lines of code, and you're done. When I had PowerShell first hit, version 1, version 2, there was no real way to do it. And then I don't know if it was version 2 or 3 of PowerShell came along. And what you could do is you could actually launch Excel and control Excel through what they call component object models. And you could control Excel from PowerShell. And you could update, you can create workbooks, you could insert data, format stuff, all kinds of different things. You can think about it as if you played with Visual Basic applications, if you use VBA inside of Excel, when you wrote macros to do a whole bunch of things, that's kind of what the COM objects are. You can do you're not going to be writing it in VBA, but you can have other languages interact with Excel. Excel interrupt through Office is a similar concept. So doing it from PowerShell made a lot of sense. I never really liked that methodology because it would always Excel had to be on your machine. It had to run, and then you had to do all kinds of tricks to make it either not invisible or not visible, and you had to turn off things to make it work faster. And if the user was on that machine and they found that it was running, they could click on it accidentally and then interrupt the automation, and then you're in a really weird state and you don't get the solution. So as I was looking for I wanted to have a plotting library, and I wanted to be able to read stuff out of Excel, because I used to be able to do that with Python. So I was like, how can I do this in PowerShell? And that took a couple of years, a lot of experimentation, and I never found anything good until I got to this, where I could use a C# DLL that Microsoft built, and then these other guys took it over and made it really very capable. It wasn't designed for PowerShell, but it was built in C#, and .NET DLLs interact really well with PowerShell. And they wrote it so you could do it from ASP.NET web pages, that you could do things with Excel. And when I found it, I was like, oh, let me try to wire it up to PowerShell. Sure, I did, and off to the races. So one of the things that I like to do is I modeled the import -Excel, and the export-Excel after the concepts in export CSV and import CSV. CSV stands for comma separated values. A lot of people, it's really easy in PowerShell. You can go around and collect information from REST endpoints, from databases, from all kinds of CPU information, all different kinds of statistics about your machines that are in your company, or pull data from places that you want on your local machine. And if you do a simple thing like right here, export CSV, it takes that PowerShell array and then you can export it to CSV, and you're good to go. And I'll do that here. We'll just run it. I'll get a couple of errors. No big deal. That's nothing to do just with this is my machine being weird. And then I saved it to a file called .gs gsv.csv. And if I want to open that, I can just say .gsv.csv. I'll run that, and we should get an Excel. And that's my get services that I just ran, and I put into a CSV file. Now, this is a lot of people over the years I see all the time on social media. They talk about how they just take their data and they drop it into CSVs, and then they hand it out to their managers or coworkers. Well, that's how they use it. And while that gets you certain results, it really is limiting. So for example, if I come over here, like you can see, I can't change the sizes, right? If I do an export CSV, I can't change the sizes of the columns, right? I can't affect any of the formatting. So I have to then, once I run it, if I want to work with it and I can't see it, I have to actually come in here and I can start stretching these things. I can click on the top right and resize everything, right? So I can use standard Excel techniques. So while I can get to the data, that's really great. It's doing all that kind of clickety-click stuff I like to automate. And that's one of the reasons I built this. The other challenge is a lot of people, I would say, hey, you should use this Excel module I built. And they were like, well, it's above my pay grade. I give my management CSV files, and I give my CSV files. Oops, I didn't press enter on the GitHub piece. There you go. Sorry, thank you. They say, well, I just give the CSV files out to management and so on and so forth. Let them figure out how they want to format it and do this and this and this. And then I showed them how easy it was, that just take out your export CSV, drop in the export-Excel, you get a lot of good stuff cooking, right? The other thing with this is that once you make some changes, the end user that uses your spreadsheet you created, they would have to, when they close it, they have to know how to save it, and then they have to know how to save it to an XLSX, and then they can actually then start working with the metadata, so they can change column sizes, so on and so forth, and then save their information going forward. And that's a bunch of steps that people don't like to take, and I don't blame them. So let's see how I'm going to take the same get service, and instead of exporting CSV, this is the simplest way that you can get going with export Excel, right? It's got a bunch of smart defaults. And is that size good enough? If that size it's not big enough to see the actual code in this section here, I can bump it up. So let me know. So you can type in get hyphen service, just like you did with the on export CSV, and then you can say export Excel. You don't have to give it a, a file name or anything. We're going to run that. We'll get the same errors maybe. And yep. So, and then we launch, and then this is exporting it to Excel, right? So you didn't, all you did was say is export Excel. It does come up with a temporary name you can see up on the top, but it does a whole bunch of different things for you. Notice we have a lot of nice formatting. We get zebra striping, right? We get auto the size of the columns are already set for you, right? So now by just exporting it to using export Excel as is, you send this off to management, your coworkers, so on and so forth. They're up, ready and ready to run. In addition, you can, one of the defaults is you have filtering. So if I want, they can, if they know how to use Excel, they can come in here and filter it and say they want to just see local system. And this could be any data, right? This could be HR data. This could be data from a database of who knows what, customer records or uptime. This is any PowerShell array that has objects in it, and the objects have property names. In addition, it does things like it sets name ranges, which we'll see more of in a bit. Uh, so I think this is something that I like to use because when I work on building reports or coming up with certain types of, looking at different kinds of information, I can collect my data. Here I'm just saying I'm doing a get service, but I could be collecting data into an array. Um, and then I can just say export Excel and all that stuff happens for me. And I can start filtering and looking and all kinds of different stuff. So I just like the simplicity of it and that I don't have to type that much to get it done. This is really easy to make work on the command line, and it's really easy, in my opinion, to integrate into a script. So let's take a look at some more things. So here we're going to do is we're going to use get process. And again, I'm using things like get process and get service because I don't have to fully explain like how am I capturing what kind of data. Get process is part of PowerShell, but get process can be replaced by whatever output comes out from one of your scripts that you run. You could run a script that looks at LDAP or Active Directory or all your Azure instances or all of your AWS stuff. And as long as you're pulling back stuff from a set of commands and functions inside of PowerShell, typically they come back as arrays of objects. So you can just drop that in there and export to Excel, and you're off to the races. So here I'm just going to say get process. I'm going to use a where, and I'm going to say just where the company is specified. And then I'm just going to, instead of getting all the data from get process, I just want to look at company name and handles. I'm going to set a variable called $title, my processes as of, right? So I'm just using string interpolation here, and the $get date gives me the date in this variable. And then I'm going to take that target data we got from get process, and I'm going to export Excel. And now I'm going to start specifying parameters. So the ones you're going to see here are automatically set if you don't set any parameters. The one you see here, okay, path, title, table name, and auto size, those are all pretty much set if you just use export Excel out of the box, okay? So I'm going to just save it here. I'm going to put that title in. I'm going to create a table name called processes, and I'm going to auto size everything. Now I'm going to run this. It's going to run, but we're not going to see anything. And we'll talk about why in a minute. So that ran for 2.5 seconds, collected everything I wanted, and it actually created a ps.xlss. Now I can use another PowerShell command called invoke item, or you can just say .psxlsx, and now we can see what the actual data is. Right. And there's my title. And that's interesting, but there's my title. And I just pulled out company name and handles, and here's all my data about processes running on my machine. And I can do things like I can drop this down and say, well, I don't want to see everything. I just want to see, I don't know, Adobe Incorporated, right? And now I'm off to the races, right? I collected my data. I set up a few parameters and switches, and I'm ready to rock and roll. Oh, I know why. Let's get out of that. Don't save. I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to run it one more time, and then we'll Now, this is how I start to, oops. Yeah, that's much better. Okay. Um, so this is how I start playing around with my information. I always know I have Excel, export Excel at the ready. And then when I collect my information, I can start putting titles on it. I can do all kinds of colorization so I get good visuals. And we're going to see some more of that, why that's, how to use that in really great effect. Now, when I'm doing this, notice I had to take two steps, right? I had to process the data, maybe it's three steps. I process, get my data, I export it, and then I had to do something called invoke item. Now, I don't like doing that all the time, right? So I'm going to do it again. I'm not going to do any in the format. I'm going to use another switch called -show so that when I run it, captures the data, exports it, and then the import Excel module says, okay, I see the show flag, and I'll just show it for you. So this is how I iterate on my data. I just sit there, I collect what I want. Okay. I might add more, where company equals Microsoft. I might add a couple of more things on what I want to select, what properties I want, information I want to see, and then I'll export it. And then I can use the -show. So it's just all automatic. And then we'll talk about it in a minute. And like the next one, why I remove the -show. So I sit there and I iterate. And sometimes my scripts get really long, right? Because I'm looking at more information. I'm creating more than one sheet. I'm creating other kinds of things on the sheets. And I'm affecting that. And then I'm just going to export it and then show it. Now, when I'm done with the report, let's say I'm going to send it to somebody. Then I take the -show off, right? And when I take the show off, we'll see what we had before, right? It runs, took a half a second to capture all that data. I'll run it again. You can see a little timer going. Took a half a second to collect, and it created a file, but then I have to take another step to show it. So why is that approach good? Why would I want to run it and not show it? Well, it's good because if you run a script on a server in an Azure function or a GitHub action or on a server in your company, you don't want to show that. You want it to run headless. So by not specifying -show, it runs headless and it creates Excel. If you want to run this on a server, you don't need Excel installed. So as long as you have the import Excel module on that box, you can run this on any machine and it'll create an Excel file. So once I'm done collecting all my data and doing what I want, I can take the -show off, run it, it produces the file, and then I can email it or I can copy it to a SharePoint or onto a network drive, do a whole bunch of different things. Okay, so that's the quick tour of just some of the basics with the import Excel module. Any questions so far? And I think we have do you have any things that you'd like to see? Like maybe you're running into some issues that you're using this, or there's like ideas that you're like, well, can this module do X, Y, Z? Drop the question in the chat and we'll look to answer it. So let's kick this up a notch with the visuals. So what I'm going to do here, we already saw something like this. We're going to talk about conditional formatting. So I don't know if you're used to things in Excel, you should have seen conditional formatting. You've probably used it a bunch of times. Which it's all that stuff is available through the PowerShell module. So we're going to use our get service this time. And this time I'm going to grab status name, display name, and start type. And there's a function in the Excel module called new conditional text. And it has a whole bunch of different parameters you can set. Okay. And what we're going to do is it has great defaults. I like defaults. Let's get back to that. Hit the wrong key. So it has a bunch of defaults. I like defaults because then I have to type less. So I'm going to collect my data from get service with 4 columns. And I'm going to say new conditional text stop. And then I'm going to export the data. I'm going to auto size it. I'm going to show it so I don't take that extra step. And then it has export Excel has a parameter that takes, it's called conditional text, and it takes whatever new conditional text you have set up. Let's run this. And what we'll see is we have all the data from the get service, right? And everything gets auto-sized. Let's just do this one more time. Let's remove this. Oops. Let's run it one more time. Okay. So it has all the 4 columns that we wanted, lays out the data, auto-sizes it. And notice that everything in column A, anything that has the word stop in it, has now been colorized, right? If I click on the conditional formatting in Excel and I say manage rules, we can see here's the rule. If I click on that rule and I can edit it, there's our stop condition. So everything that you can do in this UI is available to you in the PowerShell module. So you can set up all this rather than coming in here and saying, oh, the boss wants this, or I'd like to see everything that's stopped colorized this way. You have to come in here, create a new rule, type in your text, and you can do things like specific text, dates occurring. All this is available to you in PowerShell. Containing, not containing, all different ways to find text. And then you can click OK. I'm just going to close that out. And then because I said in the conditional text, I said just do stop, it looks at the entire sheet for anything, anywhere the word stop is, and it colorizes it that way. Pretty cool. Now, let's see. Question. Gabrielle says, did I need the addition command that you provided, or can I quick insert a string? Could you say a bit more? Did I need the addition commandlet you provided? Which commandlet did you see that? Oh, so everything I'm showing you so far is all in the import Excel module. That's all right. You don't need to install, but yes, you do need to specify it, right? So, right here's the $text is equal to new conditional text. You have to set that up and then pass that into when you export the data so that it actually takes effect. And then the export Excel commandlet will actually see that, oh, you set that, and then it applies it. Awesome. Good question. All right, so let's play with that a little bit more. So now let's say I'm going to get the same data that we just saw, and I'm going to apply 3 conditional texts. I'm going to say anytime you see stop, just do the default colors. If you see RUNN, I want the text color to be blue and the background to be cyan. If you see SVC anywhere, text color is wheat and the background is green. As we've seen before, you pipe the data to export Excel, save it to a file. I'm going to show it so I can get a quick feedback, auto size everything, and conditional text takes an array of conditional texts. How appropriate. So you can have 1 to 50 to 100 that you set up. You can drop that in here as an array, and let's see what happens. And there is our visual, right? So now it starts. I don't particularly like the colors. I just did this as a bunch of examples, but now I can start to see things like, okay, here's some stop servers, AppX SVC. And then I can just kind of go down here and say, well, oh, I can easily see the running versus the stopped. And this becomes a lot easier to work with. So apply that to your data needs. All right, let's not only do you have conditional text, but you can do conditional icons. So now I'm going to switch over and we're going to use get process again. So I'm going to grab all the processes where a company name is specified, and I want to grab a company name PM, which is physical memory, handles, and then PowerShell when you do a select object, if you do star mem star, that says any property with the that string in it that contains mem, I want to select that and display it. And the next line is where we're going to do conditional formatting icon set. So you can give it a range. I'm going to say I want column C. So company is A, name is B, and P, physical memory is C. So where the physical memory is, okay, I want to do a 3 icon set, and I want to do icon arrows. Okay. And it's the same approach again. Pipe it to your data to export Excel, create a file. I want to show it, auto size it. And now instead of using the conditional text parameter, we're going to use the conditional format. And let's run that and see what we get. So now I can see that PM has arrows, and it's got arrows that are colorized, red, yellow, and green, and they have different directions. Again, we go back into conditional formatting. We manage the rules, and you can click on the rule. You see its icon set, tells me where it was applied to the $C, and we can edit this rule. And if you set a 3 icon set, this is what you can do. You can say, here's the different icons I want, right? So you can choose the icon, all available to you in the PowerShell space, in the PowerShell module. And then you can set different things like when do these values get applied, and the types that, if in this case the default is percent, but you can do things like percentiles, formulas, numbers. So if you really want to get into it, you can do this. So I show you this as just as an example, but anything that you can do here in the conditional formatting, data bars, color scales, icon sets, anything that you do manually can all be automated, right? So I know that I can come up with a nice report, and then I can capture it all in a script, and I can run that script over and over. And I know I can collect data from pretty much anything, because that's what one of the sweet spots of PowerShell. And then I can get a nice report, give it to my boss, and then I can tell him it's going to take me 3 days to get the arrows in there, and I can get it done in 10 minutes, and then I can go focus on other things I feel like doing or whatnot. Or I can just get it to him really quickly, and then he'll give me another task, and we'll figure it out from there. So let's mix and match. This example, we're going to grab the processes again, right? The same set of data we saw before. This time, we're going to, instead of setting a 3 icon set, we're going to just do one of them. Right? We're just going to do again, we're going to apply the same icon set, but we're also going to, we can mix and match and put conditional text, right? So anywhere there's a word Microsoft, I want to colorize that and see it as wheat green. And now you can see both these parameters, conditional format and conditional text, are set, and see what we get. So not only do we get the arrows, but now I can easily scroll down and find all my Microsoft Corporation stuff. So if I'm giving this as a report, maybe it's a bunch of customers that I want to see what their annual purchases are, and I can show who's on target, who's up, who's down, and then I can highlight a particular customer as another example. And of course, on here you can do things like auto filter, which gives us our filtering, and we can run that again. Oops, let's get the right key. So I can run that again. And now I have filtering. So if I want to, give that as well, we're done. And that's how quick it is. If you know, there's not that many parameters to learn, but then you can just put them all on the export Excel, and you now built a pretty complex project. And imagine trying to do that all manually through Excel itself. Pretty tough. Cool. Any questions? We're going to move on to importing data. New question incoming. Can I limit conditional formatting to columns specified in the form of object names or column names? You should. Okay, good question. I do have the answer to that is no. You have to do it by. You can do like C:B or C:D. So look at the C and D columns. You can do it as a range of, but it's all based on the Excel RC row 1, column 1 type thing, right? So if I wanted to say, C12 to C15 out to E12 to or C12 to E15, that's how you have to reference it. You can do, I think I'm going to show a demo. I have something called auto name range, where when I do charting, you don't have to specify the actual where it lives. You can actually just specify the name of the property. You can say, I want to plot this by price and by unit rather than figuring out, oh, that's A2 to A10 and C2 to C10, but not for the conditional formatting. So that's the old way. That's the way you do it in Excel, and that's what's available. Cool. So one of the reasons this modules, hope that answers the question. If not, ask it again, please. So if so, one of the reasons that this thing is called, instead of calling it something like Excel plus plus, that I should have named it that, I call it Import Excel, was because when I first put it together and I was all excited that I could read um, Excel files without launching Excel. And it was like, wow, it really solved a whole bunch of problems. I didn't have to worry about, launching Excel and having the user get involved and make mistakes and whatnot. So I just put it out there and said, hey, I have this thing called Import Excel. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, maybe I want to write it, data with it. Or maybe I want to add charts and this, that, the other. So it just grew and grew organically. And I never renamed it from Import Excel. But let's take a look at importing data. So I have a file over here on the left, a directory, and you can see, hopefully, I have, let me just do one more thing. So here's 12 spreadsheets, right? And they're January through December, okay? And they all have the same data, maybe a different date, but they each have 100. Oops, they each have 100 records in it. And I have a thing called Get Excel File Summary. And if you've done data science work, one of the things you do is that sometimes you get data or you're collecting data and you have a bunch of files, CSVs, XLSXs, whatever it is. And the first thing you want to do is figure out, well, what am I looking at? So using standard PowerShell, I can do a directory, a dir on that sales data, and I'm going to pipe it into something called Get Excel File Summary. That's part of the Import Excel module. And let's see what happens. So now that just looked at all 12 spreadsheets, and it came back and it gives me the file name, tells me what worksheets are in there. In this case, I've only have one sheet. If there's more than one, it'll say sheet one, comma, sales, comma, yearly sales, whatever it's going to be. It tells me if that particular worksheet is visible or not. And then it tells me how many rows. So I can see that each one of these spreadsheets, these workbooks have sheet one in it, and that it has 101 rows. It has 7 columns, and it shows me the address, and then it gives me the full path. So if I wanted to go after a single one or multiples, I get a good sense of what I want to drill down into. So I just wanted to show you that. Now, let's say I wanted to read the first 5 records from February and August, right? Now imagine if you had to grab that data manually, right? You'd have to go in, copy, paste, find the different spreadsheet, whatnot. So this simply shows using import Excel. We're not going to use export. So import reads it like import CSV, reads the particular workbook. It defaults to the first visible spreadsheet, but you can specify the name on the import Excel. Again, smart defaults make life easier. And I want to select the first 5 objects or the first 5 records from each one. So they're all going to be basically the same. And I don't put the actual spreadsheet, but the first 5 on top here are from February. And then the next 5, they do change a little bit. And they do change. And the second 5 are from August. So I could actually take this data and then export it to another spreadsheet. So if I wanted to go across February, August, January, and June, I could just drop those names in here, and I can easily grab ranges of data and then output them if I needed to. So that's another way to begin to think about how to use the integration into Excel. Cool. So now let's say boss comes in and says, all right, I need a yearly sales workbook. And I want all those 12 months, I want them all in the same workbook, but I want each month on a separate tab. Okay. So these are things that I've had to work, people have called me up or I've had to work on these kind of things and go, oh, this is going to be fun. So using PowerShell, right, I can do a get child item, which is the directory. I'm going to do a dir on the sales data, start out at XLSX, and for each workbook, right, that's going to give me the April through September here, all those workbooks. I'm going to say workbook.base name. That's something that's in PowerShell that that comes out of the box. You can look at all different kinds of attributes on a file. So I'm going to grab the base name, and the base name is going to be the word April, August, December, right? And I'm going to say $WS is equal to April, August, December. So that's going to be my worksheet name. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say export that data. And another way you can export is you don't have to pipe it into Excel, into export Excel. You can use the input object. And what I'm going to say in the input object is I want to import Excel that workbook that we get and the full name. So I'll get where the full directory of where this is. So if it's on a network drive, I can just say dir on that network drive, get all the different workbooks, and I can then import Excel, to use import Excel on each one of those workbooks. And at the same time, I'm exporting it to a new XLSX. I give it the path name. Up here, I defined it as yearly sales XLSX, and I give it the new worksheet name. So I come in here, April comes in. I'm going to read that, and then I'm going to export it to the yearly, but at the different worksheet. August, a different worksheet. So even though I'm using the same XLSX, I'm creating the new worksheet as we go. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to auto size it, auto filter it, and then I'm going to just do some table nice stuff so that we can get a nice visualization. Now here I'm not using the hyphen show, but at the end of this whole loop, after I process all 12 of these, I'm going to say invoke a file name, the yearly sales.xlsx, and we should see it do it, give us the whole thing. So it's just read 2 seconds to read all of those. And if you look at the bottom, right, we have April, August, December, February. So I just read in all 12 workbooks, put them into one workbook, all the right data, everything's auto-sized. I get the nice colorization because of the table that the table name I specified, and everything has auto-filter. So if you want to, you can figure that out. And because I use the table name, it sets up those name. I set those up this way. You can do it any way you'd like. When you see table name, let me just do that. Here, when I'm saying table name, I'm creating table April, table February, all that kind of stuff, and that's what gets represented in the named ranges here. So this is cool if you know how to use it. You can click on table March; it takes you to that spreadsheet. So it's another way to easily navigate your Excel spreadsheets, and that all got set up in 5 lines of code. So again, planting seeds of how to use this. Take X number of XLSXs if you want, and you can then drop them into an Excel sheet. Doesn't have to be just XLSXs, because PowerShell's another sweet spot is it could be all JSON files. It could be all comma separated value files. You could be calling 5 different select stars from a bunch of different databases. You can apply the same concept and technique to grab all that data and create separate sheets. You can go against REST endpoints to do the same thing. Cool. Any questions so far on that? So the last piece that I just wanted to show, or one of the pieces I want to show, is you can also move sheets around. Now remember, when we ran this, let's see what happens. So I'm going to run it again. So remember, I would like to see this like from January to December, not in this order. So I can actually leave that file there. There's something called open Excel package. So if you have existing XLSXs that you don't want to export data, no problem. You can open it, and then you can manipulate it with a bunch of different PowerShell features or functions that I have. And then when you're done manipulating it, you can then close the Excel package. So here, I'm just going to bounce through it. I'm going to go through all these. I put these names in them. This is just a cute trick. I put all the months that I want. I am going to open that spreadsheet. I'm going to loop through the months as sheet names, and I'm going to say add that worksheet to that package, put that sheet name, and move it to the end. So when I run this, now you can see on the bottom, I've actually sorted all the tabs. All the sheets are in the proper order. And I could add that to the previous script. So every time I created it, I could use that to actually put everything in order. And that's using the move to end feature on the add worksheet. Cool. Let's take a look at charting data because data is very important to get charted, right? So if I have convert, so here's what I'm using. I'm just a snippet of a string inside of a here string. And it's in the format of a comma separated values. Inside of PowerShell, you can take a string and convert it from CSV. So I can convert this into a PowerShell array with the property names of ID, product, quantity, price, and total. And then I'm going to set it up so I can actually create a chart and on the data I export. So here I'm going to use a new chart definition. So this comes back to the question of, do you have to use the column names C, D, E? Do I have to know the different rows 1 through 15? When no, you don't have to do it that way. If you use auto name range, when you export the data, it knows how to take whatever property names that came in and it sets them up as named ranges in the sheet to the proper areas that they're in. If they're in C, 2 to 10 is quantity. In A, 2 to 10, it's ID. It sets up all those name ranges for you if you use this parameter, if you use that switch. So I'm going to take that data, convert it into a PowerShell array, and I'm going to export it. And for my chart definition, I want to say the Y range is price and the X range is product. The title is item price, and then I don't want a legend, and I want the height of the chart to be 225. So let's run that up. Okay, and now you can see I have a chart, and next to my data is laid out the way I like. I have the ability to I did the auto filter, so I'm good to go. Here's the name ranges, right? So if I click on quantity, that I set that up for you in using the PowerShell piece. When you say auto name range, it knows how to tell Excel, okay, here's where all the data is, and then here's my chart ready to go. You can do multiple charts. So let's do that again. And then I'm going to create 3 charts. Right? And you can create as many charts as you want. I'm going to create an item price, a total sales, and sales volume charts. And I'm adjusting the height, and I'm telling where the chart goes, what row, what column, or just what row I want it on. So I'm going to export the data to multiple charts, XLSX, do the filtering, the auto name range, auto size, and then I'm going to pass an array of charts that I want created. Let's see what we get. And you can set this up any way you want. And that's how, so once you get really familiar and you get fluid at how to use Export Excel and the different parts of doing charting and conditional text and auto filtering, you can do some really powerful stuff. And then I can just, if I'm collecting data again from wherever, I can have this stuff go through every day. It's faster, it's better, it's more accurate. And if something goes wrong, well, I can just come back into the script and say, well, what did I do wrong? Or what do I need to change today because the data changed? My other favorite topic is pivot tables. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to grab the processes again and just get the company name and handles. And when I'm going to export that to Excel, and I'm going to do the auto size. We're going to do a show, and now we're going to do some pivots. I want to include a pivot table. I want to include a pivot chart, and I want to pivot on company, and I want to pivot the data on handles, right? And I want to do a sum. Let's run that and see what we get. So here's our data. So that's one cool part. But because I said include pivot, you get a second sheet called pivot table. So here's pivot. So if you're familiar with pivots, if you look over here on the right-hand side, there's all my, those are the columns that I have, right? And then you can see my rows are set up on the bottom and my values are set up. When you do things like value field settings on the handles, I could do a count, average, max, min, product, all that kind of stuff. If you're familiar with pivot tables, all of those are surfaced in the PowerShell module, so you can actually set those as you like. Now, let's say I want to do exactly the same thing, right? We're going to do that same one again, but now I want to change the chart type. I don't want a basic pie. I want to do an exploded pie 3D. We're going to run it again. So I just changed the chart type, And we go back to the pivot table, and now I have a cooler graph. And when it goes off to the people that need it, if they like these kind of graphs, it's a very impressive technique. And again, I can just run and rerun. Now, what's cool about this is if I come over to chart type, and I hit Control Space because that's how PowerShell works, I've surfaced all the chart types. So you don't have to look up any documentation. You can do it all at the command line or in your scripts, and then you can choose the type of chart you want. You don't have to run off to a page and go, what was those charts that this I can do in Excel? All the information is at your fingertips. Um, it's another guiding principle of one of the reasons I like PowerShell. And I built that same technique into the import Excel module. Cool. Let's see. So we've got about another, so I might go a little over 130. Hope folks stay. If not, you can grab the video. Um, I'm going to show a couple of things, and we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. And I hope people are interested in that. If you're not, well, we can catch you next time. If you don't want to watch it now, that's fine. You can watch it on the video. Do you want me to repost? Let me know if I need to post the, I'll just do it anyway. So if you go head over, oops. All right. Let me just grab, hello. I'm just going to grab, for those folks who might have come late, if you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, I will post this video there on that link. You can subscribe to the channel and click the notifications, and you can know when this video gets posted. If you like what you see, thumbs up. I think there's a lot of really good stuff up there. Last question, no problem. You can have more than one last. I understand you want me to translate your message to English. Here it is. Oh, you doing a little AI there? I have a recurring problem when exporting data. Excel tends to interpret all numbers in its own way. This happens during reports, build versions. IPs are always annoying. No numbers. Yep, that's correct. A no numbers conversion. Um, is there a global way to make numbers simply be treated as numbers while ignoring dates? Good question. No, there's not. I've never managed to fix this directly in Excel, but maybe this. Yes, that's annoyed me too, and I never went back and tried to figure it out because it's not a straightforward way in my mind to get that done. Um, so yeah, that's you have to AI. I love it. Glad people are using AI. So the answer to Gabrielle's question is no. I don't have a way that handles that. I never simplified that. So yeah, you have to do what you got to do, what you've been doing. So another question, and I apologize for messing up people's names. So is there a way to compare two columns and show the difference between them? Great question. Um, so I'm going to go into the console here. And I'm just going to show you what it is. And so I'm going to do a get command. Oops. And I'm going to say module import Excel, right? So this is kind of, if you're not used to PowerShell, this may be new to you, or maybe something you know. And I'm going to say compare, COMP. And in the module, there's something called compare worksheet. So you're good to go. Now, take a look at compare worksheet, take a look at the parameters on it. So the answer is yes. Now, I don't know, remember, I wrote this many years ago. And oops, yeah, this is not gonna, let's do it here. Compare worksheet, see what the parameters are. If we get a little better. So here's a bunch of, you can see the different parameters. You have reference file and difference file, so that's where you specify both. So you really couldn't, I don't, that's a good, so if you have to do it on one, is there any way to compare two columns and show the difference? I don't know if this works on the same, if you can work it on the same sheet, on the same workbook. I think you should be able to, because I do open it only in read-only mode, and you can give it to the same one column versus one column in the same sheet. Yeah, give this a try. You should be able, I think you should be able to do reference and difference file as the same one on the same sheet. That's a good one. Because this was designed where people throw a couple of different worksheets at me and they say, "Hey, I think it's the same, but I'm not sure." And it's one of the reasons this got written. Um, so maybe not, but here's a whack. There's workarounds, right? Because you're in PowerShell, you could always copy the one you're looking at and just copy it to the backup, and then compare those two and do it that way, and then remove the backup when you're done. So, is there a way to use import Excel to move data from Excel to SQL table? Excellent question. Well, using the same thing I just did, GCM, right? That's the alias, and then you're asking, let's see if there's something called SQL as a function name. Convert Excel to SQL inserts. I hope that helps. Send data, and then there's the other way, send a SQL data Excel. Yeah, so take a look at convert from. Well, I'm sorry, is there a way to use import Excel to move data from it? Yes. So this will actually take the data inside of your Excel workbook in a sheet, and it will convert that. And I forget if there's how you specify the insert values and how many different ways. I haven't used this in quite a while, but yeah, you can set that all up with the table name and whatnot. Yep, give it a rip. And again, if you want to follow me on X, you can follow me at dfink. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can post questions on the GitHub Excel, the Excel on GitHub, the import Excel module. Post questions. I encourage you to search around. People have asked these kind of questions as well. All right, yeah. Oh, excellent. So yeah, so ping me on any of these places and let me know. Yeah, time to rebuild because make your life easier. And then I'd love to hear your experiences with it. And if you have things like, "Hey, I'm trying to get IP addresses. Is there a global way?" Drop that in the issues or the questions. I'm always looking. I'm updating the module as we go, so it's good to know. So Edgar asks, any way to import one table with import Excel in a workbook with one worksheet with multiple types? What in good God are you asking? I'm going to read that slowly. Anyway, import one table. What do you mean when you say one table? Is that a SQL table, or you mean? Can you just clarify a bit on that? With Excel in a workbook with one worksheet with multiple tables. Oh, you mean like the tables when we set them up inside of Excel? Well, I'm going to say absolutely, but I never released a thing called get table in the module. But when you do an open, I don't know if you remember, I did an open Excel package, right? Um, let's try open. Right? So when you do open Excel package, you're basically getting to the object model of that XLSX. So if you're familiar with how VBA works, once you do that, you can begin to inspect and pull data out on your own. That's basically how this whole library, this whole Excel module works. I'm basically cracking open the XLSX and dancing around the object model. So if you want to get tables from, if you know the different sheets, you can do all of that, but you're dealing with the object model, not the higher level functions that I have. And some places I do have functions that can handle that. So you get to go through and you can figure out what the different functions can do and what they cannot do. I hope that answers that question. But yeah, given the PowerShell module, you can do a lot of stuff. Again, give it a try. If it doesn't work out, drop me a note, um, and we can try to figure it out. So what I wanted to do today and spend a few minutes because we're already a little over time. Um, so what I'm running here is Visual Studio Code Insiders. So hopefully how many folks here? Oh, how many folks here are using Visual Studio Code? Type of one in the chat if you don't mind. Okay. Excellent, 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 excellent. So yeah, so a lot of folks still use ICE, the integrated scripting environment that comes with it. I understand. Awesome. I understand why they do it, but they're missing out on a lot of stuff. Now, I'm using the Insiders Edition because it comes out, they push it out. You get updates almost nightly, right? Sometimes they're just bug fixes, sometimes they're new ideas, sometimes, and they don't let you know, like, oh, here's the new 5 features we put out. And this is also the thing that where they're putting all their new AI stuff in. And then a lot of it has already made it to the stable version. But if you want to experiment, Go ahead. You can. So if what you see here will be in the video when I post it, and then you can look at it. If you run the Insider's Edition, you can experiment with what I'm going to show you here. So first, I'm going to click up here, and I'm going to go to. There's a button called Ask Copilot, right? And I'm going to change this to Copilot Edits. Okay. And I just want to do one more thing. Change this to PowerShell so I get the right shell cooking. And what Edit Copilot with Copilot is really powerful. Um, you get down here on the bottom right, you get to choose the AI model that you want. And you can see there's already several that they support, right? And you can, so if your prompts are doing things and you're not really getting the answer, because maybe you're using like GPT-4o, which is a very accurate, fast model, but it's not, but once you go to their reasoning models, O1 and O3, and I do, if you come to the AI build stuff, I talk about this in more detail. I might have some videos that are public on my YouTube channel that you can find where I talk about this in more detail. So if you go to the reasoning models, it's going to take a little longer, but you're going to get better answers. And the same thing with Anthropic. They have all the Claude models, 3.7, Sonnet, and Sonnet Thinking are amazing. And then there's also Google's Gemini that they support, and they're bringing more of these models into play. So when you start asking questions, it does some really cool stuff. Not just cool stuff, but it can code really well, in my opinion. Really worth checking out. And again, come to my AI builds and you're going to see even more cool stuff. So the other thing that's neat is notice down here, I have a file open called Untitled One, and down here I have Untitled One. So as you open up more files, the way the Visual Studio Code environment works, it takes what those files are, the names of them, are they PS files, C# files, Go files, TypeScript files, whatever you're doing, and it gives that as context so that when you run your prompt, it takes that into account as your context, right? So you have your context, you have your model, and then you can start prompting. So I have another module, which is called you can do an install module PSAI. You have to get an API key from the OpenAI website. You have to put a credit card down, buy $2 worth of credit. If you go up to your $2 worth of credit, the next time you try to use the PSAI stuff, all it'll do is say, hey, you've reached your max. It doesn't auto refresh the amounts from your credit card, so you can never have a runaway process. $2 if you're using a GPT-4o model will probably last you 6 to 10 months with kinds of queries that you're going to do. Okay, so you install that module, and I have one particular thing that I want to show. Let's see if we got this right. Cool. Okay, so I guess I'm hoping folks here know what GitHub Copilot, I'm sorry, what GitHub is, right? So on GitHub, for example, right? Let's go to GitHub. I'm going to go to my Excel module, right? Now in Excel on the GitHub, I have an examples folder where I have, I don't know, 25 different, maybe more directories, right? So this is great for human consumption. Oh, I can go, all right, I have a experimental, here's a sequel to insert, and I can look at the demo, right? So this is great for me as a human to step through, but this is horrible structure to give this kind of information to a large language model like Sonnet or any of them, right? How do you work with it? So I just recently wrote something called convert to AI prompt. So if you install the PSAI module, you don't have to get the key to get this to work. And if you get a GitHub PAT token, which is a personal access token, and if you run this and it has a problem, I put out an error message saying, get a PAT token, set it to this environment variable, and you're good to go. So what it does is, okay, I can say convert to AI prompt. Here's the name, the username, here's the repo, and there's the directory, here's the subdirectory, and then here's the file that I want, for example. I'm just going to run this, I think. Yep, there we go. And what it does is the convert to AI prompt, I use the GitHub APIs just to figure out how to navigate the structure of the um, the repo, and I went and grabbed that file, and then I came back and I put it in an XML format. And the reason I put it in an XML format is that companies like Anthropic, who are competing with OpenAI, they're kind of the two juggernauts in the AI space. They've done tons of research, and they say, hey, if you set this thing up where you say documents and you number your documents like index one, you tell the source like it came from, where it came from, Excel's examples, charts, trend lines, blah, blah, blah. And then in document content, you put the content of that file, and then you close off all your XML. If you hand that into an LLM, because it's been trained on billions of lines of code and YAML and XML and JSON and whatnot, it really understands how to work with this. So basically, convert to AI prompt can take a file on a GitHub repo, and I'll show you how you can do it more than just a file. And then convert it into this format so it's easy to use. Now, why is that important? Let's say, oh, that's cute. So I'm going to run that one more time. And then you can see it scanned it. I'm going to pipe it into Q, which is, I'm now going to interact with the AI model, right? And I piped in that content into the AI model on OpenAI, and I say, need a chat. So notice it didn't use the XML, but it sees all the stuff. And then I can say, how do I, can you see that? I create a chart, and I can even misspell it, but it'll figure it out. And it comes back with a little smaller piece of information and shows what I want to do. I can press enter, right? So now I'm actually taking stuff off of a GitHub repo without having to download that repo. And I'm starting to interact with it on an AI model. I can ask it all kinds of questions. So let's kick it up a notch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go after my user ID, dfinc, my repo, import Excel, and I'm going to go after the entire examples directory. Remember, we saw that? And what I'm going to do is you can exclude files. So I don't want to have any XLSX files because that's just binaries, a zip file. I don't want to have that in my output. And I'm going to say output path. Let's save. I want to save. I'm going to change that. And I'm going to say process all that and then save it right here. And I'll call it whatever. Import excel.txt. So it goes, it's discovering everything on that repo. So this works with any repo. And this is where lots of us AI folks are beginning to say, oh, okay, I want to grab a ton of information off of GitHub. And doing it this way makes it a lot easier so we can then give it to an AI model and start asking questions or asking it to code so it has more information. I don't have to do fine tuning. I don't have to train my own model. And these LLMs are able to take these larger contexts as well as they're excellent at understanding XML. So I'm going to save all that data. And there we go. And then I now have a file, hopefully somewhere. Did I do it wrong? Yeah, probably. Let's see if I have an import. There we go. So here's the file, right? And you can see I have index one, and I have 154 files that I pulled down, and it's all of those examples have been pulled in. Now, what's interesting is notice I can open that file here, and then you can see that it's part of the context on the bottom right. I'm going to flip over to agent mode. Okay. I'm going to use Sonnet Preview. Now, by giving import, it knowing that this is the current file that's open, it will use this. So when I prompt it, it'll use this as context so it can do a better job. It'll understand the syntax and the different functions for everything I'm doing. So I can do something like create a script to read sales CSV and make an SLXX. So this is a little risky on my part. And create a chart of region by unit. And we'll let that cook. And what it does is it takes my prompt. It takes import Excel, takes all this data that's in here, right? 5,000 lines of data, um, passes it up to the AI model, Sonnet, and it says, I'll help create a script, right? So it did a bunch of planning, and it's going to use data, good, bad, and different. And it says, okay, I'm going to create a PowerShell script that reads sales data. First, let's see if there's existing data. And so it's trying to find sales.csv. So it's going to do something with the data.csv. So this is the agent mode where it's starting to figure out what's on my disk. This is all autonomous. It may or may not come up with something, but I'm fine with it because this is just a basic example. If I was going to do, when I do this as real stuff that I want to get done, I make sure that I have a sales data in there and I'm good to go. So it did find AI sales data. Cool. And hopefully in less than a minute. Cool. So now you can see it's starting to create a PowerShell piece for me where it reads the CSV, exports it to an Excel file, creates a chart showing the type by region. And let's see. And now it'll even ask me if it wants to run, and do I want it to run? I'm going to say no. I'm fine with it running, but I'm just going to walk through this real quick, see if I think it might work. Let's find out. So I'm just going to keep this. We're going to run it. And unfortunately, it didn't do it correctly, even though I gave it all that wonderful Excel data. And it came back, says cannot process transformation. And it's okay. So it did the data correctly. It summarized the data because it's typically 10 records. And just so if I run into these kind of issues, I don't freak out and say, oh, the AI is crap. I'm never going to use it again. I'm going to copy that exact error and I'm going to paste it in and I'm going to press enter and see if Claude can actually solve the problem. Now, typically when I haven't, this thing, the agent did a whole bunch of different things. Typically when I do this, either as an example or in my code, I don't have as broad a range of files for it to look at, but it should have nailed it anyway. And the interesting part is that the next version of Claude, the next version of OpenAI AI models are coming out, so it's going to get even better. So hopefully this will work. What did it say was the problem? I see the issue. The error is related to chart type parameter. The value column is ambiguous. Okay, so maybe this will work, maybe not. So it made one change. It shows me a diff. This is what it was before. This is what it was after. I'm not going to run it, but I'm going to keep the changes. I could do undo, which means I can actually iterate with this thing and say, oh, you know what? That just messed up all my code. And I can say undo everything or undo specific ones. And then I can try again if I wanted to. Let's see if we get better results. And almost got it right. So try to create a chart. Something went wrong in a chart, which is fine. And now I can have a choice of either asking the AI to fix that, or I can go back and look at it. Again, I've been doing this for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's nailed it. If I look at all this code, it looks fine. If I took some few more minutes, I'm sure I could figure out it's a simple problem. But the point is that using the convert to AI prompt, you can walk up to any repo on GitHub. You can just grab all the documentation, right? Companies are beginning to do things where they take all their documentation that's in Markdown and putting it in a single file called llms.txt. And then you just download that. It's all the documentation. You toss it into your model, and then you can start asking questions about that particular product or the SDK that's available. And that's when I started looking at, let me just grab all of my my examples and start seeing if it can do a better job. Unfortunately, as expected, this is all my demo stuff. So I think it got confused at which data CSVs and sales CSVs, and it got off the track and then generated weird code. But this is the next step in all of this. So next week after the MVP Summit, I'm going to have more information on this, where this gets really tightened up and that you can do this, you can actually make this happen in different ways. And it's getting really exciting. And I sit here and I do what they call the new thing they're calling vibe coding. And I just let this thing chug away, builds a bunch of different things. And I begin to learn and get an intuition of what files do I need to have where, what files do I need in my context, right? and so that the AI can focus on what it needs to get done, where, how, and why. So it produces a good solution. Typically, I either get 100% of what I want, or it does all the heavy lifting, 80, 90, 95%. Um, and then I tweak if there's a problem. In addition, I could have asked it to write unit tests. Anyway, Gabrielle, I'm following you a long time and you are pushing the AI topic a lot. Now I see, or I think I see, you all did it with, well, I didn't do every, yeah, Copilot is this, my PSAI module kind of like doesn't have all the pieces that Copilot does. They do amazing work, but I see a lot of things that they do in there and I can then replicate them in the PSAI module. I never got a good result until I started using Ada and Anthropic API. Good point. So Copilot edits they are now stepping up and they're competing with Anthropic's API for Claude code as well as the Ada. So, but then again, I'm not here to tell you which tool to use. Um, I just happen to be using this one. I've used Ada and Cursor AI and Kleinbot and all that stuff, and they all have different capabilities. And I personally think all that stuff's going to converge. Um, and then you just pick the tools that you want, the editors you like, the extensions you want to add into your environment. The key idea here is the conceptualizations, right? How do I grab information off of a repo? Right? Because you're going to, no matter how you do it, you take that, give it to Ada, give it to Copilot, give it to Cursor AI. So yeah, that's a good point. But yep, it's moving in a cool space. Yep, Ada was the first out, and if you get used to that, they did an amazing job. I think things like SourceGraph Cody and Microsoft VS Code with Copilot edits are going to blow them away, unfortunately. But that's for you to figure out. It doesn't matter which tool you use. Leverage the AI and the environment that you like. Yeah, the console stuff in Ada is great. I was going to build the same thing in PowerShell. I've got a whole bunch of agents in my PSAI, which I talk about in the AI build hours that I do that replicate that concept because not only do you want it for code, but then you can use those same concepts to do other things on your file system or with your Azure interfaces and so on and so forth. I think that I have to take an additional look at PSAI. Yep, definitely. Well, it's yeah. The game's not. We're too early in the game in AI to say this tool is great, this model is great. We've seen the state of the art models change. Who's been better? We've seen it change 5, 6 times just in the last month, and it's going to be even crazier in the next few months. So it's the models, AI models are commodities at this point. It doesn't really matter. It's really the user experience. So yeah, and my money's on Microsoft, and I think Ada and the open source community is doing an amazing job. It's going to keep their feet to the fire. I'm not a vibe coder with a mechanical vibe keyboard, but I'm expecting a base I can work with and never get it done with Copilot. Well, what we saw here is I'm doing Greenfield, but I show stuff in my AI build hours of how you can better. I wish we had a little more time because what I just did here was I was just you know giving minimal prompts and I gave it way too much information to look at. But there's a thing coming out, take this note down, called Spec AI development. Um, I've actually done things where I've started a PowerShell project or work with existing ones that I have, where I start with the unit test first. And then I say generate the code from that based on the whole project. And it does amazing work. Um, Awesome. Thanks for hanging out. Sorry, I went an hour and a half. Keep an eye on the meetup page. I'll be doing more of this stuff with all different tools in the PowerShell space and not. I definitely suggest looking at the latest video I dropped. I've added, if you see down here, if you click on this, these are MCP servers, okay? And that's the new Anthropic. Servers where you can do all kinds of really amazing stuff. I built one for PowerShell. This is I don't know if it's going to be the end game. I doubt it, but it's the next level. It's the next chapter and all this good stuff. So you should check out the video I did on my YouTube about MCP, and that's going to be part of what I talk about in April. And that's just going to get cooler and better. And I'm sure that OpenAI and the rest of them are going to answer with, "Hey, here's how you do this." All right. So thanks for dropping in. I really appreciate it. If you have any more questions, let me know. Find me on the social networks, drop a question. I'd love to hear how you're using Excel, AI, so on and so forth. Um, it's an amazing time to be a developer. Thanks, Matrix. Hey, Matrix, did you get my last email? I know I sent it. I don't know if I missed yours coming back or you just saw it and it was all good. Excellent. Was it all the if it wasn't all the information, let me know. Um, awesome. Okay, folks, enjoy your Wednesday. Have a great weekend. See you at the next meetup.